Today, class, we will look at equations of a circle, and we will write the equation in standard form. Now, before we can write an equation in standard form, we first need to know the standard form of the equation of a circle. So if you look at this equation, we have x minus h squared plus the quantity of y minus k squared equals r squared. So in this equation, you can identify the center of the circle and also the radius of the circle, which is r. So the center of the circle, if you're dealing with the x-coordinate, is going to be h, and the y-coordinate is going to be some value of k. So the center of the circle is h comma k. Now, some point on the circle is going to be x comma y. So the x and the y in that formula is going to stay constant. In other words, it's going to stay as is. And then we have to know what the radius of the circle is, which is from the center of the circle to some point on the circle, and that would be known as r. So we want to find the center and the radius of a circle if we're given the equation, the quantity of x minus h squared plus the quantity of y minus k squared equals r squared, where h comma k is the center and the radius is r. So let's look at example 1. In example 1, notice that there is no subtraction inside of a parentheses for x or y. So what that means is that the center is going to be 0, 0, which is the origin. The radius is going to be the square root of 25, which is 5. So anytime you're trying to find the radius of a circle, you take this number, which is 25, and you make sure you take the square root of that number to get the radius. Let's look at example 2. In example 2, notice 4 is being subtracted from x and 7 is being added to y. Now notice in the form that we have a minus between both h and k. So if there's a minus between x or the y, then we are going to say that that number is positive. If there's a plus inside of the parentheses, then that number is going to be negative. So if we look at the x-coordinate, which is our h, since there's a minus inside the parentheses, then our x-coordinate, which is h, is going to be positive, and that'll be 4. But now if you look at the second parentheses, there is a plus between the y and the 7, which means that that 7 had to be negative in order for that to happen. So our y-coordinate, which is k, is going to be negative 7. So the center of this circle is 4, negative 7. Now the radius is taking this number 100, and we're going to take the square root of it. And the square root of 100 is 10. In example 3, notice that 0 is being subtracted from x. So our h is going to be 0. Notice that 6 is being subtracted from y. So our k is going to be positive 6. So the center of this circle is 0, 6. Now we want to find the radius. So in order to do that, you take 81, take the square root of it, and you end up with 9. So the radius of this circle is 9. Now in the last example, now we see inside of our parentheses an operation that is plus. But notice in the form, they're both minus. So anytime there is a plus inside of the parentheses, then our coordinates or our center is going to be a negative and a negative. So in this case, the center of the circle is negative 11, negative 3. And now notice that 6 is not a perfect square. It's an irrational number. So we always take the square root of that number to find the radius. So the radius of this circle is just the square root of 6. Now let's look at how to write an equation of a circle if given a graph. Now in this graph, the first thing you want to do is you want to locate the center of the circle. The center of this circle is at the origin. So what is the center of the circle? Well, since it's at the origin, we're looking at sum h comma k. H is 0, k is 0. Therefore, the center of this circle is 0, 0, the origin. Now we want to locate the radius of the circle. Remember, the radius of the circle is drawn from the center to some other point on that circle. And since it's going from 0 to 2, the radius of this circle, what is the radius? Is going to be 2. So r is equal to 2. Now we want to take these two things, the center of the circle and the radius of the circle, and write the equation in standard form. So we're going to place h with 0, k with 0, and r with 2. Anytime you're subtracting a 0 from a number, you end up with that same number. So x minus 0 is x, so that's x squared. Y minus 0 is y, so that's y squared. And 2 to the second power is 4. So our final equation would end up to be x squared plus y squared equals 4. Sometimes the center of this circle is going to be on the x-axis. In this case, we want to find the center of the circle. So the center of the circle, we need to look for sum h comma k. And in this case, h is the x-coordinate, which is 3. And y is k, which is 0. So the center of this circle is 3, 0. Now here again, we want to make sure we find the radius of this circle. So the radius is drawn from the center of this circle to some point on the circle, and it's going to 6. And so therefore, our radius is 1, 2, 3 units away from the center, which would be 3. So now we're going to take the center of the circle and the radius and replace those two back in the standard form, h and k and r. So we're going to replace 3 where you see h, 0 where you see k, and 3 where you see an r. And we'll end up with x minus 3 to the second power plus the quantity y minus 0 to the second power equals 3 to the second power. Now we need to simplify it. X minus 3 to the second power is going to stay as is. Y minus 0 is y, so that gives me y squared. And 3 squared, or 3 to the second power, is 9. So our final equation is the quantity of x minus 3 squared plus y squared is equal to 9. Now, the center of the circle is in the second quadrant. So we need to find the x and the y, which will be h and k respectively. So what is the center of this circle? Well, we need to find h comma k, where h is -1, k is +5. So therefore, the center of this circle is -1, +5. Now we need to find the radius of the circle, which is drawn from some point on the circle to the center, which is this yellow part. And if you notice, we're going from the center 1, 2, 3 units. So therefore, the radius is 3. Now we're going to take those three things, -1, 5, which is the center, and r is 3, which is the radius, and replace those three things back in the place of h, k, and r in the standard form equation. So we're going to replace -1 where you see h, but since there's a minus there between the x and the h, it becomes +1. And now we're going to replace 5 in the place of k, which remains as y minus 5. And 3 is going to be replacing the r, and r to the second power, which is 3 to the second power, will give me 9. So my final equation is x plus 1, and that's raised to the second power, plus the quantity y minus 5 to the second power is equal to 9. Now we're going to look at another equation of a circle, but this time the circle is in the third quadrant. So what that means is that our center is going to be a negative and a negative. So what is the center of this circle? Well, we start at the origin, go 2 units to the left, which is -2, down 2, which is -2. So our h comma k, h is -2. K is -2. So the center of this circle is -2, -2. Now here again, we want to find the radius, which is drawn from the center of the circle to some point on the circle. Now this graph is going in intervals of 1. So therefore, that's 2 units away from the center. So therefore, what is the radius of the circle? R is 2. So now we're going to take those things, -2, -2, and the radius of 2, and write the equation in standard form. So h becomes -2, but since there's a minus there, that'll be +2. K is -2, and since there's a minus here inside of the parentheses, that's going to be +2. And r is going to be replaced with a 2. Let's simplify it. And once you do that, you end up with the quantity of x plus 2 squared plus the quantity of y plus 2 squared equals to 4. So now you rock, especially doing my assignments. Please make sure you review this video over and over again. Notice what's going on with the coordinates of the center. Remember that if h is negative, inside the parentheses it'll be plus. If k is negative, inside the parentheses it's going to be plus. So please make sure you pay attention to your symbols. Understand what's going on with this form. Go back and do the assignment that is related to it. Have a good day.